Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. It's Thursday, June 9th, and this is a business session of the Olentangy School Board. So with that, the meeting will be called to order. And Mr. Kern, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Parks?
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mrs. Patrick?
Here.
And Mr. King?
Here. And if you'd all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? I'm not aware of any.
No, sir.
Okay. And Julie, we will on the board action items pull the one item for your information. So can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Any comments, discussion? If you would, Mr. Kern, please.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Parks?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes, the agenda approval is 5-0. Thank you. Under the board's presence report, just one item. Obviously, we had a wonderful experience at 5 o'clock this evening with the groundbreaking for our newest high school, number 4, the 24th building that we will have in our district, as Mark and Krista pointed out. Krista, Ms. Davis did a wonderful job with you and your team of putting it together. Very well done. And sort of a segue to that, we had a really good meeting of the facilities meeting last week. We'll hear more about that, of course. I just wanted to point out that it was a very good dialogue. Bill O'Sullivan was there as our owner's rep, and he and Jeff Gordon did a really nice job of bringing us, the committee, up to date on the progress of the facility, high school number 4. And there will be a full presentation made to the board tentatively July 7th. So we'll see how that works out with progress with Bill, et cetera, and the contractor. And with that, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, and again, good evening to everyone. Thank you for all being here. As always, I'd like to start off with a few good things. Recently, Liberty High School's Cameron Thatcher. We've had Cameron here a couple times. He's a 2-time state champion diver. He's going to be going to Stanford. Was recognized as the Columbus Dispatch Male Athlete of the Year. There's a picture of him and Tim Tebow from the award ceremony the other night. Additional Dispatch Scholar athletes that were honored with scholarships were Lauren Hofer from Liberty and Albert Van Fossen from Orange.
Next door neighbor.
Anna Watson from Orange won the state pole vault title. She had a great quote in the paper. She said, "Honestly, I was surprised I won, but she bested her personal best 4 times throughout the spring, through the spring season of districts and regionals, and then at the state, and actually won by quite a wide margin. So congratulations to Anna." So, and as Mr. King mentioned in his remarks at the groundbreaking, recently we, Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Kern, and I attended some bond ratings trip. Mr. O'Brien has talked about this at previous meetings, but we were very honored that to be upgraded, one of now 5 school districts in the state of Ohio, to have a AAA rating from S&P Global. And Moody's actually gave us a positive outlook, which wasn't a full upgrade, but I'm sure Brian will mention this more in his treasurer's report. So it's just, that's a tremendous honor. So we do have 4 discussion items. And the first 3 are really what we used to do here was kind of our board retreat, but so we'll go into more detail as we get through with those. So I'm looking for your feedback on our board planning calendar that we use to plan all of our meetings a year ahead. Our district continuous improvement plan, kind of have the first reading with that. And then Krista's going to talk about a project she's going to be working on next year to revise our vision statement and do some new branding for our district. And then Mr. Gordon's going to come up here and talk to you about the House Bill 264 energy project, Mr. Gordon and Mr. Eisenhardt. So that's going to be another, I think, a exciting project for us to be involved with. We do have some board action items on the agenda. The first one is approval of the collective bargaining agreements that you've reviewed with the maintenance, custodial, and field service union and the transportation union. So, and then salary increases for all of our other job classifications, non-union classified, our secretaries and aides, and our administrators. And again, you've had reviewed all of those prior to here. We have the purchase of the Graphics Way property, which was part of our bond issue and you know, our recent ballot issue. You know, and again, we can have further discussion on that, but as you know, that building is going to be used for, currently houses the OASIS program and the Olentangy Academy. Enrollment in both of those programs continues to grow. So that building will give us a lot of flexibility moving forward as we continue to develop programs. So that's been a very successful project for the academics team. Just a couple of quick important dates coming up. 2 board meetings here for the rest of the summer. As you know, the July 7th meeting is very important because that's the meeting where we might have any late resignations or and continue to do. We still have 2 business sessions because we have hiring season in full swing. So, any questions on anything in our superintendent's reports? Before I go into our discussion items, I have asked Representative Brenner to come or he's asked to come and speak with the board about his current projects in the legislature. So I'm going to ask him to. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Superintendent Rafe and President King and members of the board for allowing me to come here this evening. I tried to do this the last couple months, and unfortunately I've had some scheduling conflicts, both yourselves and myself as well. So I do appreciate this opportunity to speak before you. As you may or may not know, I took over as chairman of the House Education Committee back in November of last year. So for the last 6 months, I've been trying to get my hands around all the various aspects of being the chairman. And I kind of want to give you an update because as chairman, I've visited now school districts all over the state of Ohio, but not necessarily hit all the local school boards. And I wanted to at least make some sort of effort to do that. So that's why I'm here this evening. The chairman of the House Education Committee actually sits as an ex officio member on the state school board, as well as the Board of Regents, and they're also on the Service and Volunteerism Committee. I'm also on the Education Oversight Committee. I happen to sit on the Straight A Fund Board, and I was just appointed to an Oversight Committee dealing with, I believe, dropout recovery in charter schools. So it has a few. Now, interestingly, a couple of the prior chairmen had not been attending most of these meetings for years. One meeting, which before I became chairman, I was pushing for the Education Management Information System, or EMIS, to be updated, corrected, and improved. And so in November of last year, I pushed to get the EMIS board, or oversight board, going, and found out that the last time the board had met was in, I believe it was in June of 2009. So that's a joint committee of the House and the Senate that has oversight over EMIS, so that if there are any problems, we can bring them out publicly and try to get them corrected. Obviously, if you don't have the committee meet, it's going to be kind of hard to hold the Department of Education accountable. So Senator Lehner, this is the even year, and the way it works, she would be chairing it since she's chairman of the Senate Education Committee this year, so she decided she wanted to chair it. So we've had a few meetings, and I've already begun to realize that we probably should do a major overhaul of EMIS. I attended Auditor Yost's press conference a couple weeks ago where he was gave a scathing report of the Department of Education for the state, and one of those was EMIS, and he feels like that should be privatized. I don't know. EMIS is such an integrated part of the Department of Ed. I don't know that we can do that, but I think we can privatize functions of it to make it more efficient, so that the EMIS coordinators out here in the field can not only give input, but can receive data and feedback in a more regular basis. And so that's something that we're going to be working to improve. We've been dealing with a lot of issues, as you're probably aware now. The Ohio House went into recess for the summer, but the Speaker felt that with the presidential election year, we're technically not coming back until November. But that doesn't mean the committees aren't still going on. In some cases, the state school board, as an ex officio member, I am attending those meetings and been giving my input, which has, I think, helped influence a few of the things that were going on, including the selection of Paulo DeMaria, the new state superintendent. I had some members of the Department of Ed that were very concerned. I was concerned, actually, by the list of applicants who had applied, that some of them weren't necessarily where I thought they should be, but the consensus was that Paulo DeMaria was the right choice, and in fact, the state school board voted 19-0 to appoint him. I sit on the executive committee of that, so I gave my input, and I did tell them that we needed to select somebody now, because it had already been 5 months since Richard Ross had left, and it may have been about a year mentally that he'd left before that. So we really hadn't had a state superintendent, I think, really in charge of things for a while. So it was important to bring him in. And the one thing that I know that I've heard from everybody down there is that this is the gentleman who can try to make the trains run on time. So if we've got issues with EMIS, if we've got issues with testing and those things, I don't think you're going to see somebody come out with major policy changes, but what I think you are going to see is somebody come in to try to fix and make work what has already been implemented in law. So you'll see some law changes, but not wholesale change of public policy. I think it'll be more along the lines of technical changes in the coming year or two to try to improve the functionality of the State Department of Education, which is, as I agree with Auditor Yost, in dire need of restructuring and work. Testing, obviously we just completed the testing, and the AIR tests were coming back, and as you've probably heard, and I'm not sure where Olentangy is. I'm assuming Olentangy did well regardless of what happened. In fact, I'd like to replicate the Olentangy School District and School Board and put it in other parts of the state because we've got hundreds of dysfunctional school boards and school districts that are in dire need of help. But as you may have heard, the geometry test, and I think the integrated math too, they were expecting, I think, 59 would be the proficient level, and they were coming in at 24 and 21%. To me, that is very poor, to say the least. But it was the first time it was given the test, and it's given to all students, so not all students have probably taken those courses, so we'll see. The Education Oversight Committee, that is a committee that was formed in the budget last year, and as a member, as the chairman, I'm on that committee. It's chaired by Cliff Height, the senator, and it flips also back and forth between the Senate and the House. And that's a committee that's supposed to be taking a look at long-term problems. School funding is something that I think that committee is going to want to take up, and that's a committee that is going to be going monthly. And the idea is to hopefully make recommendations for long-run changes versus trying to change everything in about a 1-month period during the budget, which will be next year, where things are tweaked but not quite as well as you might think, and maybe come up with some long-run strategy changes to help, especially with districts such as Olentangy, which are growing, and deal with the districts that have been shrinking in student population, so that more funding is going to the growing districts like Olentangy. As you know, of course, I put it in the state budget last year, and the governor disagreed because my floor was higher than his ceiling, so it didn't work out for us. But if we continue working on that, I know Superintendent Rafe has been working with some members here to try to get that resolved and work on that. And I'm also continuing to work on that as well. And really, we've got House Bill 524 was introduced. That's dealing with value added. It was a placeholder bill with the idea of having a discussion of what does it mean for value added, but I think we should also have a further discussion of how do all these tests really work, and do we still have too many tests, which I personally believe we do. But I think that's going to be put into this Education Oversight Committee so that we can have further discussions in the long run on that as well. And we had one bill that caused me to not be here the last time was Senate Bill 3. That bill's on hold again. Leadership told me that we needed to move the bill, and then we were told, okay, we're putting it back on hold again. But that's dealing with charter school issues. I think were included in that. But some of that, Senate Bill 3, for those that don't know, is Senator Faber and Cliff Heights' bill. That's supposed to be deregulatory in nature, meaning that schools like Olentangy, which are performing well, will have fewer things to do. But that being said, I've been talking to the Department of Ed, and as you're all aware of the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the federal law change, that is going to be, I think, a major issue going forward, and I'm not sure that it's going to deregulate as much as we'd like and return as much power as we'd like. In fact, if anything, some of the stuff I've heard is it may be just as bureaucratic as some of the other issues we were dealing with. So that's something that's coming. The State Department of the Ohio Department of Education has not gotten the rules from the Federal Department of Education because they haven't written them yet. Even though the law passed last year, the Federal Department of Education is supposed to write rules. They're expecting now that maybe those rules will not be ready until the end of this year, in which case it'll take the State Department of Ohio Department of Education months to probably get those rules written before it even comes down to the local level here. So you're looking at maybe even another school year down the road before that even goes into effect. So those are really brief, flying over, it's the 30,000 foot level of the issues going on at the State House that we're working on education and stuff. And for those that ever want to get a hold of me directly, my cell number is 740-602-5033. You feel free to call me if there are any issues here. And I know I meet with Superintendent Ray on a regular basis. So, and if there are any issues, he brings them up to me along with the other superintendents in the county. But I also wanted to make it available to the rest of the school board members to let you know that I'm also available to you. If you have any specific issues you would want to deal with, I'd be happy to do. So with that, if you've got time for maybe a question or two, I'd be happy to answer any. And if not, sure.
I have one that came up toward the end of the session, and it's not, the bill's not in your committee yet, but it's in the subcommittee. It's in the Finance Committee, it's in the Higher Education, and it's dealing with College Credit Plus.
Yes.
And which, as we have more students participate, our school district has to pay more for them to participate. Whereas our AP tests, our parents pay for the kids to take the AP tests. But what came up in testimony that bothered me that I would like for you to watch is that the chartered non-public schools, the private schools, the Catholic schools, their lobbyist came up and was asking for additional funding so that because they pay for that through their ancillary funds. And that goes back to our fair funding. They're already getting more in state funding than what Olentangy is getting. And if they get more money to pay for their kids to take College Credit Plus, I'm going to be really mad.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I'll join you on that.
Larry,
because they asked for additional ancillary funding to help pay for that.
he actually came, Senate Bill 3 was going to have about 25 amendments added to it. I know their lobbyists there, Larry Keogh, for the Catholic League, he wanted that amendment put in, and that was one amendment that wasn't getting in. But we were having discussions of trying to find other funding sources for them because I know that the money ran out, and one of my thoughts would be is that in the next budget next year that the state is supplying more money for College Credit Plus. We have 3 bills actually in the House Education Committee dealing with College Credit Plus, around things around textbooks. I mean, you've probably all heard about the issues around it here, I know, and we're going to try to deal with those. I've talked to Representative Duffy, who's the chairman of the Higher Ed Subcommittee on Finance that's dealing with that bill. That was one of the governor's MBR bills. None of those bills moved prior to the break. That was leadership's request, so they may move this fall, but when I mean this fall, I mean after the November election. So I don't think anything's going to happen quickly on that. We did try to deal with a couple of issues. One bill, House Bill, I believe it was 441, that was Representative McCauley's dealing with College Credit Plus. I had 3 quick hearings and passed it out of committee to try to move that along, but there's going to be a lot more discussion. We met with higher ed about a month ago with an interested party meeting, and in that meeting, higher ed said that we know there are issues. We're going to have a report in July. Once that report comes out, we'll make recommendations for tweaking College Credit Plus. So that part of the reason why the bill, I think, was held was they want to wait to see what those recommendations are and then put those in the fall to make corrections. Because, I mean, you don't want kids taking college level classes, as an example, taking some class that's really easy, and then going up in a class rank over a student who's taking an AP class.
Right.
So those are issues that are
Exactly.
being addressed, that will be addressed, but we wanted to wait, I think, and higher ed wanted us to wait until the first year was done so they could come up with their report. So we agreed we would do that. And so I think some of those issues, along with textbooks, I mean, we had kids selling, I guess, in some districts, their textbooks, even though the school districts paid for them. They were selling them on eBay. So, I mean, those types of issues are going to be addressed, and I believe going forward, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
One, I want to thank you for coming tonight. I know just appreciate the investment in time. 2 years ago, the governor's budget, as you mentioned, we came as close as you could come to getting funding we wanted until the governor kind of line item'd it out. Any advice you have for us on things we should be doing so that next time, the next budget, we get what we need across the finish line?
Yeah, I think that some of the efforts that you're doing right now with reaching out through some lobbying efforts, I think, are definitely appropriate. From my standpoint, I've got to call into. I talked to Merle Madrid, who works for the governor, and I'm going to try to meet one-on-one with Governor Kasich to discuss education policy, and one of the issues is school funding. So I think if I can get through to him some of the concerns that we have, that and working with the next state superintendent, I want to sit down with Paulo and really work and hammer out a school funding formula. Not something that they're doing in secret, because
Right.
that's something that's happened. I've got to say this. There was little to no communication between the Department of Ed and the leadership in the House and the Senate education committees that I could tell. I mean, there was just liaisons, but nothing. When I became chairman, I was sitting down weekly, and in fact, I had a meeting this week with members of the Department of Ed. I mean, some of the major liaison people and people who actually are the policy people in there. So that we're on the same table, at least we know, okay, this is an issue. And so I think working on some of those types of issues, especially with school funding for growing districts versus even districts that are either shrinking or flat, I think that's something that definitely needs to be addressed, regardless of whether we've got caps. One thought would be, given that we've had a state surplus, is to actually fully fund the school funding formula. I mean, if we were to do that, I don't even know
Yep.
that we would be having this discussion right now.
Yep.
So that's something that I think is going to continue going forward. I have concerns about Medicaid expansion, and we're seeing that numbers are getting gobbled up a lot faster. So I think that's something where we're going to have to tweak some things down the road to avoid gobbling up the rest of the budget, which I would like to see. But I think continuing to work there. I think this Education Oversight Committee may be something where we can get a school funding bill stuck in it and have them review school funding in general. So we have a long-term discussion versus, like I said, when we get the budget, it comes in February. By the time the House really has a chance to look at it in the subcommittee, they've got about 4 or 5 hearings, and that's about it over a couple-week period. And then it's really it's not the time when you can really make a major change. So if we were to do that, I think that will help us in the long run, and specifically Olentangy and all the school districts, actually, even in Delaware County.
I guess I'd follow up that the tone that came out of the last bill that you put forward, that there was some interest by both the House and the Senate to be collaborative to a more equitable funding formula. So
Correct.
that was great, and I appreciate that. The governor, however, has been very staunch in his use of Olentangy as a whipping post for a district that is affluent but has numbers. So, I mean, I appreciate, following Mr. O'Brien's question, I agree. I think if there's a strategy, a specific thing that maybe we are doing incorrectly or that we need to improve, because the governor's been very clear that that administrators should, and I believe he used that with Dr. Lucas, that administrators shouldn't be down at the State House lobbying on behalf of the district. So he's already kind of set his borders.
Okay.
So I guess as you develop this more, who else can we be speaking to? I mean, I know Peggy Lerner has been, she's been a supporter, but, she also is concerned about the rural districts and to make
Correct.
sure that they have their funding. We don't want to take money from those that need it more than we do.
Personally, I think there's plenty of funding there, especially if you take a look at the districts that are on the guarantee, not even the rural districts, the districts that are on the guarantee have lost large percentages of students over the years.
Right,
They're still being
right.
funded like all those students are still there, which is why you see a skew in numbers, especially amongst the urban schools. One other thing that I've discussed and what I wanted to see potentially, but I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, so we didn't introduce it, was a potential for outright changing the school funding formula to fund charters separately from
Yeah.
traditional public schools and put it in the Constitution and tie it to the formula. So then the charters aren't worried, but you could actually see the flows directly. You're not worrying about whether it's going to Olentangy or some other school district first. I've got an interesting mixed results on that. I sent out a brief survey, and depending on which district you were, was how so it was pretty much a mixed bag on that one. But in light of that, or in lieu of that, I think we should continue to work on maybe raising the caps and raising the funding for growing districts. I'm going to continue to talk to the governor's staff, and I think with the better communication with the state superintendent, if he were to make recommendations to the governor, I think then we might have a better shot of getting the school funding formula fixed. The other thing that I would do differently this time than I did the last time is make sure that the funding formula itself is basically the backfill that we would have is tied directly into the funding formula, so that if he line item vetoes it out, he line item vetoes the entire funding formula.
Yeah.
Well, he won't do that. So if we were to somehow get that through, he'll be forced to, at that point, sign whatever's there or shut the whole school system down, which I know he won't want to do. But I want to do it in such a way that I've got them at least on board or willing to say, okay, we capitulate, we'll go ahead with and do it with you. So that's going to be the next step. And that's something we're going to be working on for the next budget cycle, which will be coming up in about 6 months.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Yep.
it. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you being here for 5 years.
All right, I think we're gonna move right into the discussion items, if you're, oh, I'm sorry. That's why I'm not running the meeting. It's fine.
Just real quick, a few updates here. So it's a nice agenda. We just have financials and approval of minutes and appropriations. Mr. Rafe mentioned we are very proud. We were upgraded by S&P to AAA. He's correct. I think he's continuing Dr. Lucas' legacy here and stealing my thunder before he gets to get to it. But we are one of 5 districts across the state. Definitely the largest of any of those, and probably one of the most with the amount of, we talked about 23 new buildings in 25 years. Unfortunately, our debt load's a little higher, but I think it's a testament to not only management, but more to our voters out there and the strong support that we get. As we mentioned before, as far as our around the state, people, I think we're one of the first ones that did all 3 on our ballot issue. So them as a rating agency, we're very impressed with that also. So with that being said, we talked about savings. It's kind of an estimate. It's kind of, since we had the split rating out there, even though we did get moved from a stable to a positive outlook with Moody's, but the estimate comes in around about $350,000 we save by having the AAA with S&P. So a little lower interest rates with that. So very happy to have that. Today, I'm sorry if I'm a little hoarse or a little tired, but we were down in Cincinnati for the bond sale itself for the new building. Also this evening to purchase the graphics way and some other capital improvements throughout the district. The sale went real well. We actually had what's called a retail portion of the sale, which is people like you and I could buy some. We had about a little over 20 million in orders of it, so I'm very impressed with that. We'll get a report later of where the zip codes of those came from, so we can see how many were from the local area or, of course, around the country. But our preference was that, we gave them the zip code around the area to have try to do the best they could around here. So, with that being said, the orders were strong. Even on the institutional side, which is your insurance companies nationwide, didn't step in again. That's okay.
I hate to stay out of that.
Yeah.
Let's give Mr. O'Brien a hard time about that, but that the orders are very strong. They call it oversubscribed more than what we had out there, so that allowed us to push down a few basis points the interest rates there, and it generated another saving before what we pre the sale of the day, another $380,000 after today's sale. So it was a big issue, and it was a good thing out there for us. So I'll take any questions.
In layman's terms, would you compare the S&P upgrade to like getting a bump on your credit score? Is that a good way to explain it to people?
Yes.
And the important kind of a nuance to it is you want to get a bump to your score while you're out borrowing money.
Yes.
Right? Because what we were concerned about happening is we'd issue the bonds, and then 6 months from now we'd get the upgrade.
Couldn't
and
help you.
We would have already priced it a AA, not a AAA. Right? And so getting it at issue is important because then the bonds are priced for the credit quality that they are, and we get the savings, not some future bond. So it's important that we timed it right. And frankly, market timing-wise, it probably couldn't have been better. The muni market is really strong right now. Equities are really volatile. People are looking for safety, security, and tax evasion savings. Munis really provide that. So it's great timing with a high quality name in the market. It's going to be oversubscribed. So good.
I know one of our volunteers in the district got a call from her broker saying, "Do you want in?"
Well, we placed an ad in the paper, right, to get some retail interest. It's a good retail home. But I would consult your tax advisor first.
Right. Disclaimer.
Thank you, Brian. Good job with that.
All
All
right.
right, now we are ready for, did you have something? Oh, you're
No,
gonna.
I just got, I put
Moving
it up here.
on.
Oh, you're gonna do the first
I
one?
put a slide just
Yeah,
because,
the schedule.
so the public can see it, and transparency,
First of all, we do not, we
Public
came with, we do not
participation.
have any public participation.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry to keep on interrupting.
No, that's good. As long as you're saving us money, keep doing it, buddy.
The CIP is supposed to be on it too. I don't know what that is, but that's, so we're starting with a review of the board meeting calendar. You have that in front of you on one sheet. This is the top half of it. Obviously we are right now at the June 9th retreat business meeting. So we have our discussion items there, the action items, and then the next meeting. I'm not doing that one yet. I'm just doing this one. I thought they were all gonna be in one presentation. Okay. That's all right. So, so here, I guess what I'm looking for here is feedback, ideas. Randy will capture them as we go through this. If there's other additional changes, you can see already for the next June 22nd business meeting, we have another student awards presentation. Our discussion items are special education audit, the digital conversion, student well-being, and then policy updates. We always like to have those action items that we know what we have coming up. Obviously, we add to them as we go along as other things come up, but those are kind of the big ticket things that we do every single year. So moving forward in through July and planning out to the rest of this school year, I have inserted in August there's a community engagement report that's tied to the continuous improvement plan. Is something we haven't done before. I've inserted the attendance boundary plan and then attendance boundary updates throughout. One thing we have moving out, the enrollment projections, something we've spoken about previously. We always do with the enrollment projections, recommendations for whether or not we need to be considering new facilities. So that was something that Mrs. Fiesel, I know you had brought up before. So that's already part of that, and the facilities committee's already getting ready to work on all of that, do that work prior to the November meeting. So is there something, are there other things that you see or you had that you have questions about? I know, Mr. Bartz, we have the facilities management. In August, we're going to talk about what that will look like. It was one of the topics you had brought up to me.
And the key, in going back to the June one real quick,
Mhm.
June 9th today, I had mentioned to the others that we're going to move that reference to key performance indicators, the second bullet.
Oh, yes.
To June 22.
Yes. Yeah, so I think we'll make that correction. I'd already put this up before we decided that at our last planning meeting.
And go ahead.
I don't know, so I just want to clarify that, because I'm getting questions about this, I got questions about it today. The naming process will be announced in August of the next
Mhm.
high school, and then we'll announce the name in September.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Of which year? This year, naming, just
naming
the
it.
school. Just name.
Yep.
And another placeholder for July 7th would be the potential that we would have a report from the facilities committee on high school 4 status.
Oh, okay. Yep. Very good.
And at some point, and it may be that meeting, or we need to do a special meeting in July, yet to be determined,
Mm-hmm.
is we'll have to approve the site package.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And that could be the same meeting as July 7th.
Yes.
That along with the report, status report, because the goal would be, very beginning of August, they've got to start site work.
And so as we do these fourth high school updates, and soon will be kind of scope and schedule updates, but then also financial updates on how the numbers are coming in.
Oh, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
It was a real good discussion, as I mentioned I mentioned earlier, real good discussion at facilities the other night about where they were with the budgeting and how they're acquiring the budgeting numbers. Bill O'Sullivan is doing a very good job for us.
The one topic that's not right now inserted, and it's because Mr. Fetty's not here tonight, he's on vacation, so was the discussion on school start time, so we know we're going to be inserting that. So he is working that through a process with the Continuous Improvement Committee, one of our superintendent's committees, and then so they'll have a report coming on school start times.
Are they coming with a report or a recommendation or both?
They'll make recommendation to me that I will in turn.
Okay.
They're going to make us, it'll be a report.
They're going to do their presentation, then you'll come back.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything on testing?
Typically, Jeanette, I see here, is when do we talk testing in here, Jeanette?
It was delayed this
Would
year.
you-
And delayed.
Yeah.
Have all results back by June 28th.
Really?
Not before Christmas yet, but we'll have all of our testing results.
Yeah.
Third grade ELA next Tuesday, and then all the rest come.
Wow.
So typically, and this is just, so I guess, again, it's something for you to consider. We've done we have the report card, and then, we didn't do a annual report on academic achievement like we've done previously because
Didn't have the information.
and it just came back, came back, you guys have that hard copy. And we've talked about more of a comprehensive kind of state of the schools report. But the issue in all those things is nothing really aligns. Like you think
Yeah.
about the state of the schools, state of the union, state of the state, or whatever you want to call it.
It's always at the beginning of the year. when you
Right, that's
decide.
typically in January,
Yeah,
which
but-
is our middle of the
Mhm.
year. So if that's something that, whether it's an update on the CIP and where we are with all the CIP, plus you indicators and all those kind of things, we just have to think better how we want to time that out. Really and the CIP is what what our goals are as a district, and obviously we're going to report on that progress. But there are a lot of other things we measure, and that's where our conversation on the 22nd is going to fall back to that topic of key performance indicators. So as those come through, we can separate out the academic report and the key performance indicator report. And maybe we'll have we won't revise it to that level this year with the CIP, but a future CIP could look differently as we further develop those key performance indicators. Any other questions on the board planning calendar? All right, now for our continuous improvement plan revisions. Thank you. So, you have this. You have highlighted. If you were, maybe Julie and Dave might have been on the board when we went through this process years ago. We had a facilitator, Ted Kanapke. I don't know, Kevin, you might have been on the board then too, or just coming on. Ted Kanapke came and he kind of worked the board at that time through a process of our continuous improvement plan revision, and we went through this phrase, the Board of Education commitment to excellence. Our vision statement has always been a part of the CIP. I'm not certain it needs to be a part of the CIP. And Chris is going to come up and talk in a little bit about the vision branding project. But what I'd like for us to consider is that our vision statement, while I think there's a lot of good things in it, is too long. Mm-hmm. People understand the mission statement, but people ask me all the time, "What's your vision? What's your vision for the district? What's the board's vision for the district?" So. While those things are all important, and they've been in place here for a long time, and they are maybe more like core values, I think those 6 bullet points are more like core values. They're not that piece is not easily recognizable, stated. I think it needs to be more succinct, and we need to capture it. What's our vision? This board, our leadership. What's our vision for our district? So we're looking to make some major revisions to that as we move forward. Our mission is very clear. People can repeat our mission. They understand the mission. They throw it in our face when it's not working for them, and I think that's a good sign that people understand it. I respect that they do that, but. I think there's a lot as what I would consider the highest performing, most fiscally responsible district in the state of Ohio. We should have a brand that when people think of this is Olentangy, this is what it means, and it can be very succinct. So.
Do you have any ideas for that?
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Well, I'd be open to hear your ideas if you share them. You're more than welcome to share them here and now. Krista's going to talk more about that now. Yeah, we can wait until Krista comes up and talks about that here in a minute. So as for the revisions to the CIP, in red on what I submitted to you are some suggested changes. You'll notice in benchmark 5, right now it says increase or maintain at least 75% of junior seniors participating in all of those things. All of those things listed in that benchmark are in that indicator of that benchmark are ways we think that measure college and career readiness.
Yeah.
So our goal for our academic team is that by 2018, 100% of our students will be college and career ready. So we want to creep this goal from 75 to 90, and then next year creep it to 100%. Because our expectation is that all of our students will be participating in some way, shape, or form in those measures. So that is one that and again, when it's in red, I'm recommending us to consider that change. The other recommended change is in benchmark 8, the second indicator. Measurable community outreach at all levels of administration include triannual community forums and annual reports from principals to superintendent on community engagement. Those triennial community forums are things we have not been conducting, or that we didn't conduct this year. I would submit that they were fairly well attended, sporadically attended. I think we have forums on an as-needed basis, but to fabricate a topic and try to, I'm going to come back with a report from all of our principals in August on all the different community outreach, community engagement events we do. I think we're doing an adequate number. We don't have to create 3 artificial community forums to say we engage our community. So I'm submitting that we can delete that from our CIP. All the other academic benchmarks and indicators, well, you've heard me say for years, we always want to improve. I'm looking at my foil.
They don't seem to be changing very much.
They're not, and the reason they're not is because we haven't seen how the new test, since we're in this testing tornado, we haven't seen how the new test behaved, how our students have performed on all those new tests. To change them now would be changing them based off of
Old data.
no information.
So could I get the benchmark scores for the last 3 years?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk. It's more about that because we'll have a second reading of this at the next meeting. Yes. That would be. It probably is in your annual report, the 2015 annual report that you were just given. But I can get it in a more succinct format for you, so you don't have to go by building. And yeah, if you look at that, you could. It may be, but if it's not in an easily discernible format, I can get that for you. That's just where we were coming from. We discussed where we go with this and how we recommend changes to it. The academics team believes that just, we don't know enough. That 2015 report is based off of tests that were the park tests. Next year's 2016 report is going to be based off of the air tests. And, it's just, I think if we don't know the goal we're setting them to because we just don't know that target.
And the state's talking about changing their cut scores.
Yeah, maybe
As
Mr. Brenner should have
Representative-
stuck around for this part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Could ask them if we could stop
Yeah.
changing this every year.
Yeah, it's
Right.
a moving target.
Right. Well, and again, there are a lot of things, and I guess the other part that would be helpful to explain for the board and for the community is all of the different benchmarks and indicators that are tied to state testing and the ones that, because there are others that aren't,
Right.
that are above and beyond how the state measures our progress. So, you have that captured. And this is Mr. Fetty's. This is his. So I got throw him under the bus. Yeah. Now-
With benchmark 7.
Yeah. Now in benchmark 7, because we've talked about this before, and it's in yellow because I'd like more feedback from the board on what that would be, what we could potentially change it to. But I'm throwing it out there as a opportunity for revision.
At one point, I wholeheartedly supported keeping a low cost per pupil, but then when I saw school districts doing that on purpose and gutting programs, that kind of concerned me. And I don't ever want to see this district cut programs or support staff in order to bring this down, because then that impacts your academic
If
learning.
this was the only benchmark,
True,
then I would
I
see
got,
that as a risk.
yeah,
But if we were to do that, we'd be in essence sacrificing performance on the remaining benchmarks. So I'm frankly very comfortable with this or something similar because it does balance out the academic performance to
Right.
being fiscally responsible.
And
I'm
we
not
did
disputing
finish.
that hasn't happened other places,
right.
but you'd be sacrificing performance
Mhm.
on the Blue's report.
And we did finish in the top quartile for similar districts around. You guys seen it? I think I had it passed around my levy time there. Maybe I'll send it out to you again. But also is our cost per pupil did go up, but it only went up 0.6%.
Yeah.
So as we continue to add students, but also add additional positions such as gifted or intervention, and and market increases for our staff, it's going to drive that cost up. But I think it's good to benchmark it still against some of our other districts, make sure we're not too far out.
So that prefer to come with not a hard dollar target or a percentage improvement, but it's like relative performance, some pure group of benchmark.
So
Yeah.
what I heard you just say in that comment is that the second sentence works better than, and maybe we don't, again,
Yes,
maybe we don't
I would
need
agree
the
with
first
that.
Well,
Yes.
my problem with the first sentence is the term "or decrease," because
Yeah.
to me the problem is we should not be in a position to the connotation for me is a decrease of the cost per student. What is it? What are we giving up for the student? Even though we know we're not, I don't like the connotation of the "or decrease"
Right.
personally.
We're kind of drafting when we wrote it, making sure that we're scaling up and taking things on the side.
Yes.
Right.
And we should be able to grow enrollment faster than expenses. So while you could be growing dollars of spending, growing at a slower pace than your headcount. That's
Well, and we
why-
did decrease
That was
per
the
pupil.
intent of the, so you can increase spending and decrease attrition.
So I agree with that, but what advantage do we have as a district to be the lowest cost?
Doesn't say we're gonna be the lowest. cost.
Well, but you're driving toward, it seems that we're driving towards a benchmark of top quartile against similar districts. I mean, is that an aspiration, or is that an aspiration driven by finances and lack of funding? I mean, to me, I'm okay with the general benchmark overall. It's the idea of using that as a decreasing or declining benchmark and what that connotation would mean towards students. That's my only issue with it personally. It's just, I mean, I don't, I mean, while I see that as an advantage, so we go to the voters and we say, look, we're spending less per pupil, but look what your kids are getting. Okay, but that's great, and that's a testament to administration. But is that really do we want to use that benchmark every day to just say who we are as a district, or are we just going to use that at the time we come out to ask people for money? Ask voters for money, you know what I mean? Because we give more value for less. Maybe I'm not being clear.
You don't want to go into binge and purge. Right. And then you grow, spend, something happens now to pull all that back. I prefer a healthier strategy. Be ever diligent on your spending. Make mindful decisions on when you want to increase spending and what that means to your benchmark. Right. Doesn't mean we're not trying to be the lowest. And that's why I like the second half of the sentence.
Right.
That would be, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm just
So we'll
hung up on the term.
We'll draft some recommendations then. Hearing what the conversation was, we'll draft some recommendations and bring them back at our next meeting. Just as an example of where we made a conscious choice and we added 6 gifted intervention specialists because all of these things should be those 7. Like 7 is the benchmark. 6 and 7 are the benchmarks that kind of hold the first 5. You're responsible for the first 5. So and they balance each other out, like Kevin was saying. But we made a conscious choice to add 6 gifted intervention specialists because we needed to hit some of those other academic benchmarks, and that's where we're always in that kind of balance. And we are fiscally responsible. We are efficient, and I worry about where the edge of the cliff is, because I know I don't want to be standing here answering for if performance falls, and it's because of lack of resource allocation. So we do have to be ever vigilant about that, and that's why I keep working with our administrative team to say, talk to me about what we need. Don't talk to me about what you want, talk to me about what we need. And if you can demonstrate a clear need through performance, then we'll talk about what we need. In some cases, we're a victim of our success because we don't have any of those glaring deficiencies. So, the other one in benchmark 7 that I would recommend we discuss for change, achieve an overall pupil teacher certified teacher ratio of a level of 16 to 1. This is an indicator we have not hit for the last few years, as we've added staff, especially in gifted and in intervention, our growing number of specialized learning centers, that staff has increased dramatically. So currently, our certified staff, we have 1,240. Thank you, Mr. Meyer, for compiling this so quickly. Certified staff. Are you going to? You don't have. So 1,240 certified staff. That's teachers, guidance counselors, intervention specialists, gifted intervention specialists, nurses, librarians, psychologists, all of those people. And so our enrollment of 19,350 gives us a pupil teacher ratio of 15.6. If we look at our core instructional staff, just not the unified arts or those kind of classes, but the core instructional staff, English, math, science, social studies, grade levels in elementary, and so on, we are at a pupil teacher ratio of 20.25. If you take the certified staff and include the intervention specialists, because they're certainly needed, the gifted intervention specialists, they're not required to have. The intervention specialists we are required to have, just as a comparison, if you want to consider a different number than overall certified staff, is a pupil teacher ratio of 17.58. Now we want to be highly mindful of this this number, because 85% of our expenses are staff, and we're not looking to just frivolously add staff, but using that number, given the broad scope of all of our programs, with all the intervention programs, the growing number of intervention programs we have, and then obviously serving gifted students and all those kind of things, and then just all the other librarians and guidance counselors, things that we have in our program. It's just make sure that that's a good best way to measure. Now the 5-year forecast will continue to measure, because that's what they report. That's how the state measures it. So
How we define it, we can debate. What's really important is making sure whatever that definition is, we can compare it to others.
right.
Each one with our own unique definition.
Right, you can't.
And that's the people that need it.
But you know what I found though, and I don't know if this has changed because of reporting, is that in our school district, we would consider someone like our dean of students. Well, they didn't have a dean of students in Dublin, or so what they were calling things was different too. So I was trying to do research on how many administrators we had, compared to other school districts. So what they call something might be different too, in how they classify something. So I think it's going to be hard. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. How do you compare it? Oh.
Administrations have choices of how they want to put resources. Administration, maybe it should just be totally students. And that, the variations of, then you can explain those differences in the different situations, right? We've made mindful decisions on where we deploy resources and how we deploy them. If we start pulling resources out of the definition, then it's like, well, I can hire here because they're my metric.
Well, and that's when we do break off our administrative costs per pupil.
Yeah, the cup report information, whatever they determine.
And that may be a better.
The Cup report does have it.
Yeah.
I'm looking right now, but it's always been a couple years old.
Oh.
It's always the issue. Now it standardizes among everybody.
It does.
The issue is I believe it's at least two. Maybe
I think they're on the 2014-15 school year now.
And then maybe that just that indicator. If we do focus on cost per pupil as being our fiscal metric, maybe that's good enough, and that cost per pupil metric doesn't necessarily have to be there, or the ratio metric. But
yeah, I like the ratio because of the leverage of the ratio. When we first started looking at this, that ratio was north of 17 versus CIP meeting. But the other way around, it was 14 that said
Yeah.
that
Right.
16. Like, that's what campus only elementary 16. And then we held that metric at 14. We're going to 65 interested. That's, to me,
Okay. Well, again, I think I have guidance about what we can discuss on Monday to bring back as some possible other measures. And here again is that we just know that right now we've set it at a level of 16-1 that we're not. I'm not suggesting we lower it, but just to make a goal we can easily make. I'm not interested in easy goals. But that one right now is trending the way, we need to maintain it. Maybe we rewrite it to maintain it at its current level, or something.
yeah, we're open to changing the absolute number in
Right.
the metric, right? Rationale for it. Rationale.
Right.
Great. Okay. Well, that's my two topics. I'm going to turn the next topic over to Krista, who's going to talk about our vision and the branding project. She's going to be a major undertaking for us next year.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks to all of you for participating earlier this afternoon with the hats, the shovels, the whole 9 yards. I think it was a great time. So as Mark mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about the vision and then the branding project that I will be beginning in the fall. And so, as he mentioned, we know our mission statement, but this vision statement has been in the CIP for a while now, and I don't think any one of us can rattle that off the top of our head or really know what that means. And so, as you know, most organizations have their mission, their vision, their values, or their guiding principles that they can refer to. And so what we're talking about doing is taking that vision statement and really making it something that we can all get our arms around and be able to know, understand, and work towards that vision statement. And so to that end, we know that there are some really great components to the existing vision statement, but we want to streamline that. And so that's what we will be looking at and bringing back some suggestions so that we're not wordsmithing as a larger group, but be able to come back and really say, this is the essence, I think, of what the vision of Olentangy is, and then let's talk about that from here. As Mark mentioned also, those bullet points under the vision in the continuous improvement plan really are great components that we don't want to lose, and so they'll be reflected elsewhere as well as we can move on with that. So, or as we move on with that. So, in order to look at our branding, our image, how we represent ourselves, we kind of have to have that piece figured out first, because again, we know our mission, let's know our vision really well, and then let's talk about what image we want Olentangy to have in our community, for our students, and all of our audiences that we have. So what we'll be doing is, after the vision statement is refreshed, we'll look at our branding. We're really great with, some of our colors, our logo, but we need to really make sure that we have a streamlined approach with all of our buildings and the district, and what we want people to know about Olentangy, and that's what we'll accomplish through the branding. And so that's something that the communications department will be working on throughout the upcoming year and bringing back updates, and definitely looking for your input as we move forward with the branding. So that's like just a really quick synopsis and a heads up that that's what will be coming as we move forward in the upcoming year.
One thing is, I'll say somewhat off topic.
Sure.
I'd like to explore trademarking.
I was just going to say that Brad Reynolds was a stickler on that, and we never accomplished that because he hated to see other entities selling our stuff.
Familiar ring to it.
Yes.
Absolutely. We would,
Absolutely.
Yes, that it would definitely be part of
Yes.
a brand,
Yes.
an image, everything. We will definitely pursue
trademark.
become the Ohio State.
Yeah. Do we have a brand manual now?
We have a very outdated style guide.
Okay.
So we will have with the branding, we will have an updated brand guide and style guide for district usage. To me, it's amazing, quite frankly, that we have gone on without really any guidelines or, guardrails to all of our materials. But with almost 24 buildings now,
Yes.
and a district with nearly 20,000 students, we really need to tighten that up.
Mm-hmm. And are you going to use the communications committee to help? Or
I'm glad you brought up the communications committee, but because I've been in this part-time status this year, I haven't utilized the committee, but will be doing so starting in the fall. So yes, they definitely will be a think tank for that, as well as other professionals in the area.
yeah, because I just paid a lot of money to do this for work, but I think that there's a talent here in the district for volunteers to do that, because what I spend, I don't want to see the school district spending, although it was well worth it for my company. But I think I know of people in the industry that, just like we tap for the facilities committee, that we can tap and get their creative juices, and they do this for a living. So I'd like to see the volunteer residents get involved.
We'll definitely use them for their input as we move through the process.
Big one was just hired by one of our major state agencies today, who has offices on 23. Yeah. So I think that he has kids in the district, and he should be helping us.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good.
His phone number.
Sound like a volunteer.
Can I answer any other questions for all of you?
When will you be back?
Yeah, you're right.
On the vision, I'm not sure that we have a specific date yet, but I would say during the summer.
It took the Ohio Chamber a year to go through a new branding process.
Well, the branding process will be long.
Yeah, the branding will be the year.
Yeah.
But the vision is something to take care of before that even starts. So I would say sometime this summer. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And Mr. Gordon and Mr. Eisenhower, the House Bill project.
Good evening. I am happy to be here tonight to talk about the House Bill project. This has been about a year and a half in on facilities committee discussions and working on this project. So many of you heard me mention it. We were talking about PI because this ties into our PI discussions as well with equipment. So tonight I'm going to talk about the process we used. I'm going to ask Mr. Frank Eisenhower to come up, and Frank's going to talk about the facilities committee, what we found, and facilities committee recommendations from there. And all of this ahead of time for our next board meeting. The goal was to ask the board to approve a resolution asking the vendor that we chose to work with to present on our behalf to the state, to the OSFC, for this energy project. So that's tonight. We're going to present this, talk about it, get questions out in an effort to move forward then with that, allowing Keith to move forward to recommend to the state on our behalf. Once that is done, we will come back and state approves it. We'll work with Mr. Kern on financing and how we move forward from there. But at this point, we're just asking for permission to go forward and get the project approved by the state from there, so that we can then see how we want to finance or move forward with the project, which then would come back to the board working in cooperation with Mr. Kern.
Are there two typically attached like that, where you approve all the work and it's funded later? I prefer to have the two pairs together. But the funding doesn't make sense on it.
Well, the part of the process when we submit this to the state is they will go through and they will review the numbers and the calculations and the information put together by the vendor we chose. So they want to make sure that all of that's in place before we go out and get financing, to make sure that it's kind of like it's their check to make sure that the districts are moving forward with a program that's appropriate and fiscally sound.
So I wonder when we get it funded, who issues the district?
It's Good question. We'll have to. It's a new one for me. So we're working with our advisors on kind of how we want to do it. We want to issue through the state or do, for example, work with the first securities that we currently work with.
And we did start down the road. We did an energy project back in 2000. I think it started in 2011 and it was finished up in 2012. But the district was self-funded. So we had started down this path and chose to fund that ourselves. It was a very limited project in scope as compared to what we are looking at here. The process for a house bill project is that it's managed by the Ohio School Facilities Commission, which now reports to the OFCC. And the OFCC was created to bring more programs in. The House Bill 264 was one of those ones they brought in and put under their purview. The goal of the project is it must pay for itself out of the energy and operational savings in 15 years or less. You choose an energy services company. There are several methods for doing that. One is direct invitation. You have to have at least 3 companies review it. You can ask for 3 companies. You can put out an electronic notification and bring in 15 companies if they want to respond, put on websites or newspapers. That process can be cumbersome when you try to work through 10 or 15 companies. It's pretty, the process we used, which I'll cover here soon, is pretty lengthy, and to do 15 companies would be difficult. We decided we would narrow it down to 3 companies and use the direct invitation method for that. Our contract then is with the ESCO, the Energy Services Company, and then they represent us to the state and then do the project. And they also involved in the contract is they must give us an annual savings guarantee, and they have to use the OSFC template to agree to that. And the savings must be monitored and reported for a minimum of 3 years afterwards. And for us as a district, the savings and the monitored part is something we've really stressed our ESCO because, as you know, we presented now I think for 2.5 years on our energy savings, and our partner that we've chosen should we move forward knows that we are going to be watching it. It's not something that pull the wool over our eyes and not get. And that was one thing when we did the last hospital project that we didn't get, and that's kind of what then led into us going forward with energy was the reporting back afterwards and saying this is it. So wrapping up that contract, we thought we wanted to make sure that we had that, and we're in place now with our meters and monitors. That's something we look at daily. So going forward, it's definitely something that we can watch ourselves and make sure that we're achieving the savings that have been promised to us. So,
so we did similar effort several years ago. Is that on track to achieve the 15-year savings?
That was paid out of local funding, and yes, with our energy project that we've taken on and gone through with our controls, we've monitored that, and yes, we've saved that money. It all did tie into our energy savings program. There was some pieces that was more equipment, things that we changed out, so that the piece that we tweaked afterwards and monitored ourselves was the operationally, is it operating the way that it should, are the control settings and those things in there. The biggest part of that one was changing out equipment and savings there. We did lighting with fluorescent and those, so we had a savings from the base year when that was originally proposed in 2010 to 2012. And then we've taken that savings that we had in 2012, once that went in, that became our base year then for all of our further energy savings going forward. So to answer your question, yes.
Well, maybe that's the question. Have we actually gone through Hospital 264 last time? Will we be
Yes. Yes. Okay. Let's try. Oh, so the Board of Education must approve the resolution, which we talked about. Upon the approval of OSFC, then we move into the financing, which is what we discussed going forward with that. The other process with choosing an ESCO or part of choosing an ESCO is that generally most districts will choose an ESCO. The ESCO comes in then and does they'll bring a program to you and say, okay, here's the things we recommend you do. You'll save X amount of dollars, and this is how many years your payback is. District moves forward with that ESCO. We use a little bit different method, and the first part was the same, but then we went further with it. And the first part is similar to the choosing an architect, and that is you submit qualifications, you score the qualifications, you choose a vendor. The vendor then, as I mentioned, specifies the project and for what's included. They supply the cost, the energy savings calculations, they submit to the OSFC, and the vendor completes the project. The problem with this method, and while a house bill project allows you not have to get competitive bidding with it, the problem that we have as the district is we're always looking for competitive bidding. We're always double checking ourselves and checking prices. So we went quite a bit further in our process. And the process that we use is we created the RFP, and we were very specified the prescriptive. We specified the items that we wanted. Change out the district lighting to all LED, interior and exterior. Change out mechanical equipment that was aged and ready to go. And this is the part that ties, as I mentioned, and I mentioned back last fall on the PI, is this is an opportunity also to change out equipment, boilers, air handlers, chillers, etc. And then the third part of it was changing out building HVAC controls. And so what we did is we did this, we specified which projects we wanted, or what air handlers, what boilers, what chillers, the controls, and again, it was a very prescriptive RFP on what they wanted. They then submitted that back and gave us pricing. And the reason we wanted that was that once we chose an ESCO, and let's say that the ESCO was the low, had the best cost and the best proposal on, 4 out of 6 items, we knew that we could get a better price on those 2 items, and that gave us the opportunity to beat up an ESCO on pricing. So, okay, you were low on these, and we want to choose you as our vendor, but we've got 2 other quotes on a chiller that was much lower. To be our partner, you need to match this. That was the intent of going through this process. We didn't want to just estimate and say, hey, you saved $7 million, when truly maybe we could have saved $8 million because the equipment didn't cost us as much, or we didn't spend as much money on the process. So we then created a subcommittee to review their submittals. And the 3 companies that we chose to participate in this was Trane, because Trane has the ability controls the majority of our buildings and works quite a bit with our district, has a lot of equipment. Johnson Controls, who also has about a third of our controls in the district. And then Heat, because they're familiar with the district, Heat has worked with our energy savings project, is involved in the training and working closely with us on getting those parameters in, training our energy managers on what to look for, how to manage the controls, and advise us on equipment. The review process, we created a subcommittee with facilities committee members. Mark Scott participated, who's a facility manager at Ohio State. Frank Eisenhower, who is our resident mechanical engineer on the facilities committee. Bill O'Sullivan, not on the facilities committee, but he's been our owner's rep and was willing to donate his time and spent quite a bit of time, as you know, building the buildings with us and partnering and putting in a lot of that equipment and creating those things we were talking about. Eric Bull was on the committee at the time, and we maintained a commitment to continue down that process. And Eric is a construction manager who has been involved in building buildings again and putting those in. And then Kevin King, who's the chair of our cost efficiency committee. We wanted to get a component of cost efficiency in that as well. So Kevin came in. Then we had, sitting in on the interviews and participating in the process, was our district energy manager and our district head HVAC tech, which is Dana Beal, and you've heard me mention him before and how valuable he has been in our energy savings program. And those are the 2 most familiar people with the mechanicals and the lighting and the energy consumption of the district. So they were great questions and resources for the members of the committee to go back to and ask questions of. After the interviews, we discussed and scored the submissions. The district staff, myself, the energy manager, and HVAC tech, we did not score. We want to keep this completely on the community subcommittee to kind of go through and review and run that process. And we had a fair and unbiased process on that. And then after review of the scoring and pricing, we established that Heat was our choice as our ESCO. And Mr. Eisenhower will review that, but they had the best proposal on each one. So where I mentioned that we have the opportunity to compare chiller prices between the 3 and kind of push our ESCO to meet all those prices, this ESCO was the lowest on each of those.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to the board for having me in this evening. My name is Frank Eisenhower. I feel like I need to say a few things about myself. I know some of you in the room, but not all of you. Like Jeff said, I am a mechanical engineer. I'm a professional engineer. I'm also part owner of a large MEP consulting firm and feel qualified to be part of this subcommittee. And I've also been on the facilities committee for almost 2 years now. So Julie, I'm one of those residents that just wanted to get involved and really donate my services back to the district. So the subcommittee that we formed, like Jeff had said, once we started to get into the details, there was lighting involved, equipment replacements, and then building automation controls. So right away, we approved the lighting submittal and the equipment replacement. And really, the equipment replacements are things here in Shanahan. There are a couple air handlers and a boiler, equipment that really needs to get replaced as part of this. And I think Jeff will touch on that, how it's going to relieve some of the PI moving forward. We chose to separate out the controls portion. And if any of you have questions on what controls are, it's as simple as a thermostat on the wall, and all the way as complex as the computers that run our buildings. The controls were by far the largest portion of this project. Really north of $3 million. The district has issues really with their controls. You have various controls, two main ones really, Train and Johnson controls within your buildings. You do have some older buildings that are more than 10 years that are having specific problems. And then speaking with Dana, your district, your manager, they are experiencing failures in some of their controls in their buildings. So some things need to be done to those facilities. Your controls today are not universal, which means your buildings really don't talk to each other. One building could be doing one thing, another one completely different. And then when you replace HVAC equipment, you plug that into your computer system, and that computer system can't see it. So I don't want to get too far into the gory details. I certainly don't want to bore you with some of that stuff. But the controls that we are proposing are BACnet, and BACnet is a protocol that was written by ASHRAE. It's accepted really throughout the entire world. It's an open protocol that really most every manufacturer is heading in that direction, and is by far the dominant player moving forward. So, working with the subcommittee, we recommended that he did the calculations. They presented all these energy savings to us, and it was the committee's job to, did these really make sense? As an engineer, I felt like I had a good idea of that, but we also recommended, hey, let's get a third party, somebody to look into this. And it's an engineering firm that does work for the district. And they also did their own independent calculations, had all the information from HEAT, what they had planned on doing. They crunched those calculations, and we do have a third party validation. So it was part of, having that comfort factor of moving forward. So subcommittee recommendations. We definitely want to recommend moving forward with the LED lighting changeout. We want to move forward with the equipment changeout. And we also want to move forward with the controls. However, we have a few caveats associated with these controls. Like I said, it's the largest expense as part of this project. So there's really, subcommittee felt we should kind of proceed with caution, right? So we propose to replace all the controls in really all the buildings, starting with the buildings 10 years and older, but we also want to add Orange High School onto that, which is about 8 years old right now. We want to use a phased approach. So what this means is we want to start with a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school. And I think most of you know that some of our buildings are very similar, so you're going to see similar outcomes on those. So we want to start with a high school, middle school, and elementary school, and monitor those savings immediately. And if we don't see savings, we have the ability to make adjustments, or we have the ability to not, move forward with the entire project. So, like I said, let's proceed with caution. The committee felt that we really should submit all the buildings to the state, but let's get that money reserved. It gives us the flexibility then to do all the buildings moving forward. But like I said, we want to recommend, let's start slow, let's proceed with caution. Let's make sure we're getting those savings out of this project. What's next, Jeff? Did you want to present Yeah, I'm gonna struggle seeing this, and I really don't know what you guys want to hear in relation to the totals that are up there. But these are the breakdowns. Is this Shanahan, Jeff? Or is this is the district totals. Thank you. So this lists the items there on the left that we're doing, the annual electrical savings, and then the savings from maintenance, what the project costs, and then also you'll see on there projected utility rebates. That's working with folks like AEP locally that have dollars to give back to energy users. And you can see it's a considerable amount of money. And there on the right-hand side is really the simple payback. And if you look down in the bottom right-hand corner there, that's approximately 6 years. Jeff said that these projects, you need to pay back within 15 years. I'll tell you, 6 years is a good number. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck.
They look at it, so you got 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna. They look at an aggregate of the total project, and the reason those couple are so far out of skew, I mean, you're replacing air handlers, right? So an air handler basically never pays for itself. You don't save enough energy. That's why that number is a little deceiving. You see 55 years. So they look an aggregate of the entire project.
So, one question, well, we try to run this against the 5-year capital plan or the multi-year capital plan. How much does this reduce the capital plan that you just did?
I definitely can't answer that question.
I don't know that it reduces the needs as much as reallocates and moves around. Now, when we looked at the millage on that early on, we were tight on the millage on the PI. And this is one of the discussions we had at that time of with the PI, this was a way that we could take some of that pressure off and change out some of the equipment. So we talked about extending the life of things. That's one.
Yeah, so we have a list of projects and here's a huge number of is this,
So
all 7 million is in that capital plan?
Those-
Do you think they're gonna run out of capital?
No. Everything that's on here was in the capital plan. It was in the capital plan. So
Take pressure off.
it will take pressure off. We didn't. That plan that was there was an estimate based on life cycle, and our PI millage or our PI what we're bringing is a little bit less than what that plan had called for, and so some of these things like so what we did is we extended out life of asphalt and different things on the PI to meet that. So this is another way of taking the pressure off.
I was gonna say, you had to bring up asphalt. You don't bring up asphalt.
Talk about asphalt for Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, it's in.
And I'm gonna talk too, just for if we do go forward with the project and finance it, the way you pay back is you take the utility savings from the general fund and you transfer it over to debt.
To pay it off.
That's what, because I remember when we looked at this last, the reason why we had to put this on funding is the funding wasn't cheap. We could use our existing rather than borrowing money at that time, relatively unattractive interest rate. It just forces you to drive more savings to pay the interest. Because OFCC uses the interest to pay for staff and players in the program. So with the simple payback without inflation and financing costs is a nice metric, but then you need to look at real financing costs as well, because that's going to stress it out. Now, when you're at 6, it can turn to 15 because of growth. But that's,
And that was, again, when part of submitting to the state, as I mentioned earlier, was the state verifies calculations as well, so then you know what your true numbers are as they verify. So they come back and say, no, these aren't. Now, we've done that by getting the independent review. We've kind of moved through that process, so we don't think we'll have an issue with state approval. The controls were the big one. Yeah, and what really you're seeing on here, just a quick snapshot of a summary for it, is the lighting. We're using the lighting to pay for the mechanical equipment, the 2 chillers, 2 boilers, 2 air handling units, and then the controls basically are funding themselves. So the savings from the lighting is what's bringing the rest down, and the funds or the, controls are neutral, pretty much on the process. You see it's 6.1 years on the controls, 5.98 total on the payback. So the controls are neutral, and then the lighting savings is paying for the equipment. The other thing that's not included in here, and there's some where it says estimated annual maintenance savings, that's really equipment replacement things. Another benefit that we can't include in this analysis when we do it, that we will see as a district, and it's one of my favorite examples, are the light poles, tall light poles. We have a lift truck in the district, and we have a guy that is almost 40 hours a week on that truck changing out light bulbs, especially in the winter. In the summer, he's going around and repairing poles that have quit working, repairing lights on the sides of the buildings. And the reason for that is, the lights on the poles are like your light at home. Pick up your lamp at home and shake it, that filament goes out. And our pole lights are the same way. At Arrowhead, where it's in that open field, those lights shake, and we change some of those 2 or 3 times a winter because of those shaking out. When we change the LED as part of the project, is new wiring in the poles, and then the LED lights, that goes away. So we will see additional savings even just on that will almost pick up a portion of a maintenance guy who won't have to be in the truck as much. There will still be things to do. We'll still have, they are mechanical lights, even with LED bulbs, or things we'll have to work on. But the time in that truck and what we'll see back from that is huge, to be able to put them onto other electrical things as well that we can't put in there. But that's the other advantage that we can't include in these breakdowns. That's not something the state considers. That's
why wouldn't we just do the first 3 and not do the rest? And then we get your quickest payback. Toss the ones that have bad paybacks.
Yeah, because that, again, the pressure in the PI, this is a way of getting the payback, takes pressure off the PI, we change out equipment.
What do you mean, put them back into the PI and take them out of the project?
Put it back in. They're part of the capital plan, at some point they'll be funded through PI or some future PI. But it really bogs down. Two of them are 50-year paybacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, don't get bogged down on those numbers out there to the right. I mean, really, they're very deceiving. But like I said, they just don't pay for themselves from an energy standpoint. You're taking a piece of equipment and replacing it with something very similar because you have to, because it's ready to die.
And the question, but if the crux of the House Bill 264 is a means of borrowing money using the savings to pay back the money, why would you crash it when you don't need the standard?
Again, in this case, to take pressure and get things in the project, that there are some energy savings, your boiler replacement, your chiller replacements, there are some savings there. It's a much longer period, obviously, but that's the main crux of it, is that we're alleviating some pressure off of the PI.
So that's not compression.
Grab that. Or, go ahead, one more.
The one thing we wanted to show here is we do have individual breakdowns for each of the buildings as well. So like I said, we want to proceed with caution. We're going to start with the first 3. So we have these breakdowns to compare to. We just don't have this, summary that we hope we get there at some point. We do have the individual breakdowns for the buildings to help as a guide moving forward. Next one, Jeff. Thanks. Do you want to do the summary?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Frank.
Frankie.
And the reason we included the Shanahan was that it's important, and it gets to those top 3. One of the top 3 there as far as the savings are the controls. We've had a lot of back and forth on the controls because we have 30% of them are older, considerably older, 30% are kind of in the middle, and 30% are newer. And so you start talking about, okay, what we're going to do with these controls and this equipment is the payback. We're going to see that payback and how soon. So that's where the phase-in approach, and it's something that working with Heath, they've agreed to. It's not usually standard in House Bill projects, and that's agreeing to phase in. So we know building by building, because we have this breakdown for each building, what we should see. So we go through and we change out the controls in those first 3 buildings. We're working on the controls in the next 3 buildings. We're monitoring those first 3. We know what we should be seeing, and we've got the equipment in place to monitor that and watch that. So it's important that we have these, because that allows us as that check. And with heat being so willing to do that, because again, that's not usual in a house bill project for them to agree. That's usually they want to come in, do the whole project, sign with us. You know, you don't want to do our project, we'll move on. With heat, it's putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak, that here's what we say we can gain, and yes, we're willing to structure our contract in a way that makes sure you get it. If you don't get it, you can not do the rest of them, and we're not going to come after you for the rest of the project. So that's, again, we have not signed a contract with them, but if the state approves it and we decide to move forward and fund it, then that would be part of the contract, and they've agreed to that.
I feel better doing it that way to see that it's really going to work by phasing it in instead of cutting it and say we're going to do it and then you're on the hook.
Yeah, and the phase-ins, again, that's the controls portion. Not the
I got it.
But that controls, we spent hours debating the controls and what to do with that. We want to make a prudent decision for the district. We don't want to waste money, but we also don't want to leave that about the pressure on the PI as we go forward with the controls. When they do start really going as a whole, that's a big cost right away with it. So being able to start phasing these in and changing those out is definitely cost avoidance on some big factors later, as well as energy we'll lose on failures where we're not seeing things, we're not seeing equipment. And these new controls are a big part of allowing us to manage the equipment. The things that we're trying to do now, these change out of controls takes us to the next step. And that's big because that, you know, we can do things with equipment we can't currently do with our current controls company. Now, you know, we have Train in a lot of our buildings. Train can do that, their new version. And their cost for the new version is significantly higher, and Johnson can do that. So their cost for changing out the controls is significantly higher. With the controls we're moving to, they can do it at a much better cost, and that's the important thing. So it's not that Train or Johnson can't do it. Our version of the controls can't, and because they're not BACnet compliant, we can't switch to something that would, or we have to do a wholesale change out no matter which company we went with for controls. So, in summary, as Frank mentioned, the Facilities Committee voted at their June meeting to move forward. They had endorsed HEAT as the vendor of choice back in March with the lighting and the equipment, but then voted to go forward with the controls portion and the whole project as a whole at the June meeting. And that was after we had received our independent third-party review of that, come back and validated the report that HEAT had given us. And this is the last House Bill 264 project that we think the district will qualify for quite some time. As you know, we've been very energy efficient. We've kind of gone through the steps. We've hit all that low-hanging fruit, things that can go in here. We move forward with this project. We've kind of knocked off those things, and we're really drilling into how we operate daily, when it's on, when it's off, at what temperatures, and the behaviors part of it, where shutting those lights off, you know, walking out of the gym and shutting the lights off when you leave, those type of things. So that's what's left for us, is the, you know, turning things on and off at the right times, and then behavior. And then I've mentioned the relief on the PI budget, and then also our district progress and energy savings. Oh, I apologize. And here's, as I mentioned, 11 and 12, so we did the original energy project, 11 finished up in 12. We were $1.39 a square foot. We've now brought that down to $1.06 a square foot, and this goes into Mr. O'Brien's question on have we seen a savings? Yes, because our base year was 13, and so we've been comparing against 13, which was still better than the 11 and 12. And then we're projected to go down to 80 cents per square foot. All three vendors were in the 80-cent range on their projections, what they could do for us, and hitting that 80%. Or 80 cents a square foot would put us in the top 5% of school buildings, or really any buildings operating like ours in the country with doing that. So we've had great success. This kind of takes us to that next step and really gets us down. But with that, I will take any other questions that you have.
Jeff, I understood maybe what's the review period? Is it like 2-3 months or something?
With the state? They're going through, the person in charge of this program has gone to the private sector, and they're getting something in place. So I'm hearing there's a backlog, but I think it's a month to 6 weeks normally. It's not a terribly long process for that.
Review that, kids get offline on
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, do we have any, I don't see any public participation for action items? Okay, with that, we'll go to the board action items. So I will present for discussion and action items A, B, C, D, and F and G, meaning we'll treat E separately. And these are the agreements, as Mark had mentioned earlier, and salary increases. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah.
Mr. King?
Yes, action items for the board, A, B, C, D, F, and G pass 5-0. And then a motion, please, for salary increase, item E. A motion to approve.
Almost.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions on that? And would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Abstain.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes, so action item E passes 4-0 with one abstention. And then would you please present your treasure items?
Yes, present action items A through C, approve the minutes for April 28th, approve financials for April, and approve the amended FY16 appropriations.
So the motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
And any comments? Dialogue? Call them. Sure,
Question.
sure.
So I saw the bond amount was 79 million, but then there was an 8,000 below that number. I'm talking about C. Appropriations. For
Yeah, student activities. Certain groups do, especially at the end of the year, do activities, fundraisers, where they bring money in and you're essentially spending it out when they originally budget. We do have to increase those sometimes throughout the year as those fundraisers. Maybe they had planned on doing something to start the year. So these appropriation adjustments, you see this throughout the year for those the student clubs is where the 200%.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
Mr. Bartz,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes, treasure action items A, B, and C pass 5-0. And Mr. Rafe, the superintendent?
I'd like to present superintendent action items A through F for approval.
Your motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And any questions? Discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Bartz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes, so the superintendent action items pass 5-0. With that, we will go into executive session with approval for pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. So can we have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. Bartz,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yep. Yes.
Mrs. Patrick,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes, so the executive session passes 5-0, and there won't be any further business except for us to come into this room to adjourn. So thank you all for being here this evening.